Hello, beautifuls. Welcome to Successful Witches, our podcast where we are all about spice, smut, happily ever afters, and indie romance life. I have a beautiful guest joining us here on the show today, the one, the only Sarah Blue, who has been kind enough to come and join us at the time that we are recording this episode, right in the middle of the launch of Swallow Your Pride, her latest book that is out that we are going to be raving all about in this episode because holy fucking shit, Daddy Aiden, like we have to go there lots in this episode. So be prepared, settle in, get a cuppa. This is going to be one hell of an episode. Welcome in, Sarah. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here and talk smut and books and daddy with you.
It's just like the biggest dream to get you here and on the show and in amongst everything else that's going on in our kind of organizing this episode. Before we jumped on to record, we were talking about the utter chaos that is a book release, especially as an indie author, and how it is such a fun ride, but at the same time there are a lot of moving fucking parts going on. So for you to be here and spend an hour with us, I'm just incredibly grateful. For all of our beautiful listeners and those watching along on YouTube, would you like to do a little intro about yourself, about who you are, what you write? Because you have got a range of books that is really fucking amazing, like in terms of the spectrum that you write across. And I think because of where you go with the types of books you write, I would love if you could kind of sum it up for our listeners, of anyone who maybe hasn't come across your books before.
Sure. So I am Sarah Blue. I live in Maryland in the United States. And I'm primarily known for my Omegaverse books. And if you've never heard of Omegaverse before, I swear it's not scary. That's basically mostly in a contemporary world with an Omegaverse society, and most of my Omegaverses are why choose romances. And then from there, I branched out to paranormal. And my paranormal books are much darker than my Omegaverse books. There's a lot of murder, a lot of just very morally gray characters. Those two books that are out are actually MF, but the next one is going to be Why Choose. And then my latest book is contemporary, and that one's going to be a series, and it's super cozy and sweet. I tend to lean, even with the paranormal, I wouldn't call it a dark romance. I would call it like dark romantic comedy. I wouldn't really call it dark. I definitely lean towards the sweeter side of romance. You won't find me writing like anything truly like bullyish or anything like that. I do have some like mafia ideas, but even that, they would be like squishy soft for her, and then like, mean to everybody else. So I just like different worlds, different characters. I'm down to write it all, and they're all fun in their own ways.
Yeah, and you were actually my introduction to Omegaverse. I have to say, I had heard about it. I had kind of read a few things explaining what it was, but I'd never really quite taken the plunge. And I don't know what it was just about your books that really just leapt out and grabbed at me, that I was like, I think because it was in that, because I'm a must have happily ever after girl, like must have. And I think I really liked that your style of writing, because I think my first book of yours that I read might have been Charming Your Dad. I think that was the first one I read. And so I already knew that you were, that was, like you say, like the dark romantic comedy style. Really, I just fucking loved that book and that ride. And like, I was just like, okay, this is where I want to go. Like, if I'm gonna dip my toes in this world, this is someone I know I'm gonna be in safe hands with.
People get really nervous. They're like, I don't know what this is. And it's all of my Omegaverse books at the beginning do have like a 1.5-page long thing that explains what it is. And it's really, it's a human society where no one shifts, and everyone is born and designates basically when they hit puberty, and you're either an alpha, a beta, or omega, and that kind of decides how your personality is and where you land in society. That's it. And then everyone's banging. Everyone's horny. Everyone is so horny in Omega. That's my favorite part. Everyone is feral in Omegaverses. Everyone is DTF 24/7. Like, that's the best part about it.
It's like the perfect, like, kind of catalyst for a romance novel, right? It's like, you just know everybody is ready at all times.
And if you're a candle girly, like if you are really into scents, you will love Omegaverse, because that's what it's all about. Like you're like,
yeah, because I think as soon as people start hearing the words like omega and beta and alpha, like they start thinking wolf, right? Like, because that's kind of, especially if you come from paranormal romance, you know, kind of background, like you're immediately starting to think like, okay, are there wolves involved? Like, what's going on? But it's not. Like, it is just humans essentially, but with these, as you say, like certain kind of classifications that would almost be as if you were in like a pack, right? Like it's got that kind of pack, it's got that pack feel. And especially with your why choose romances, like it that becomes even more apparent, because you've got these groups coming together to form a pack. Yeah. And within that there can be these different kind of mixtures of people. Yeah,
like you can have, there's no set like this amount of alphas, this amount of omegas, this amount of betas. It can all be mixed up. And just with like true polyamory, not everyone has to be involved with everyone either in order to be a pack. So it's a lot of fun to play with, because there's so many dynamics that you can do. And like a big thing too is people not liking their designation, or feeling like they should have been a different designation, or just not liking where their designation lands them in society, like being an omega and being needy or not being able to do the job you want to do, things like that.
Yeah. So, and in your world, like your books are kind of all set within the same, I guess, like universe essentially, right? Like there is sort of a little bit of crossover between, they're not necessarily like interconnected, right? But you've got characters that pop up between.
Yeah, so Heat Haven, these ones behind me, those are interconnected. Like people do meet each other in those. And I do like sneak Heat Haven into one Pucked Up pack. But like it's like so brief. It's just like it is the same world, you know, they're not completely separate. They're all based in the United States. It's just as if it were an Omegaverse.
Yeah. And so one Pucked Up pack is also a hockey romance, which for anyone who, I mean, right now hockey romances are going through a whole moment. Like, so that right there, if you're watching this at the time this episode comes out and you're loving your hockey romances, like make sure this one is on your list if it's not already. What the fuck are you doing? Like and that one is, as you say, a why choose. And really, the scent thing was like such an interesting part, because that was the first one I read of yours, and I was like, oh, this is so interesting, because that straight away was like talking about scent matches and how you know, like there was that immediate recognition of being connected in some way, but then having the whole kind of emotional turmoil of what that means for the characters. And that book is such a we were saying before we started recording, like that book fucking like breaks your heart, but also is like the most fucking fun you'll ever have in your life.
It's a roller coaster. Like we're gonna get like really nasty, but then like we're gonna be sad. We're gonna be sad girls for a little bit, but then we're gonna be fine again. It's all fine. Like when I was like, I had thought about this book way before I wrote it, like probably almost a year before I wrote it. I knew like the general trajectory of everything. But yeah, it's by far my most emotional book. It took me the longest time. I mean, it is my longest book too. It took me the longest time to write. So I'm like, God, this shit is sad. Like, can we go into heat or something? Because
because for those who aren't versed in the terminology, when there is a heat, there is basically just non-stop fucking for quite some time.
Yes. So like your heat is basically like super ovulation. Like you and like it's like it's kind of like super ovulation meets your period too, like because you're so emotional. There's a lot going on. It's painful too. Like if you don't have your heat serviced, it hurts. And they're just feral, and that's why you need multiple so that like you're not hurting, you're getting serviced, you're good to go.
Yeah. And there's kind of a whole like nesting component and being in the dark, and like, you know, there's a lot of those kind of, I guess, like almost like animalistic traits that come in during those moments. And I mean, just purely as a writer, like there is a lot you have to pack into those scenes. Like it's not just writing a good time, people getting down. Like there are a lot of elements you're having to like weave in and factor in. Let us not forget knotting that also comes into this.
Okay, so if you haven't read,
you have to explain for anyone who maybe is like, what the fuck is a knot?
there's knotting and locking, and these are what alphas have. So if you're a male alpha, you have a knot. And so just basically think of it as like a bulge at the base of the penis, right? So then you're gonna pop it in there, and then you're gonna be like so turned on. Your omega is just like, like, and it's messy. Omegaverse is messy. If you're into fluids, Omegaverse, like, I mean, when I say this girl is wet, she is wet. So he's gonna slide up in there. She's got a super omega plus, and it's in there, and when he finishes, it basically bulges and locks him into place, into her or him. Depends on what omegaverse you're reading. You know, male omegas have a special butthole.
Omega don't discriminate.
Right, and in some other omegaverses, the male omega can get pregnant. That's called mpreg. That's a whole nother thing we're not gonna get into. But the knot locks them into place. Basically, it's all about reproducing, right? Because you're locked in there. And then the same
like
thing with
making sure that things are happening where they should be happening.
Exactly. And then the same thing with a female alpha. And if she was with like a male omega, she's gonna suck his little weenie in there and he can't go nowhere and somebody's getting pregnant. There's a lot of breeding in Omegaverse. If you don't like breeding, Omegaverse probably ain't for you. I mean, granted, like a lot of mine don't have pregnancy at the end, like they do in like the extended epilogue, but like if you don't like that idea of like it's filled to the brim.
This is kind of like the this is like the instinctual drive that this is where we're headed. We're not doing this like purely just because we're feeling horny. Like there is like some very biological chemical processes going on here.
Exactly. And that's like, it's like kind of like a thing that drives you. You're not like, especially omegas, they're not all there during their heat. They're like, I'm just trying to get ravished and filled up. That's all they care about. All they want.
I think that like that's the thing, right? Is that it's not far off so many other genres of romance that we read about all the time, right? Like we get the possessive males, we get the breeding kinks, we get the, you know, kind of like just being fucking, like you say, like ovulation, like turned on, like ready to fucking go.
And I'm gonna say something controversial. I do think Omegaverse and PNR Y chooses help make a lot more sense of the situation than any contemporary Y choose will, because sometimes you're reading like a contemporary Y choose and they're like, what has this girl got? Like, what is she like? She has a beacon. What is she doing to get all these men? But like in paranormal and Omegaverse, you kind of have that animalistic and or magical element that like it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
She's a siren, she's a magical mermaid, she's a special witch, she's an omega. It makes sense. Like that's why they want her.
Yeah,
And
like
I love contemporary why choose, but it does click a little easier in these. You're like, well, that makes sense why they all want her and
yes.
want to
Yeah.
be together.
Especially when you have the kind of angsty, you know, maybe like group dynamic where there's sort of the, you know, there's always that lingering question about like, do they actually like this person, or, you know, what's going on. And so, as you say, you can have, especially in, for example, your books, like you can have the angst and you can have the turmoil and you can have the drama and you can have the kind of, you know, almost like enemies to lovers. Almost, I say, like I wouldn't really classify any of yours as like true enemies to lovers, but like there's that kind of distance there, right? And
Right.
it does go a lot of the way towards kind of paving that path as to why things happen that, as you say, perhaps in like contemporary romance, like there would still be that question mark of like, like did they do enough? Like, was there really enough to
Yeah. I think magic and things like that always make things easier to explain.
Yes.
I think every author is probably different when they say something like that. I'm sure the idea of writing a paranormal is like,
Yeah.
no, 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 thank you. And then, you know, for other paranormal, the idea of writing a contemporary is like,
yeah,
no, thank you. But magic, omegaverse, it makes it easier to explain. It's like they're biologically programmed to want to be together. And I think one of my favorite thing about omegaverse is that like everybody has their place in society. It's kind of like a group. There's certain people who work, there's certain people that stays home, the wealth is shared, and for the most part everyone is pretty pansexual in an omegaverse. You're going to see a lot of different dynamics, and most of it falls more to like designation than gender.
yeah, that's really true. Is that it's like you're attracted to what you're attracted to, not because of gender necessarily. It's there's any number of other reasons why you might be attracted to that person, and
Right.
scent and things like that being one of the major drivers. And I really loved as well that in One Pucked Up Pack, how there was the whole kind of sub storyline about how some of the guys didn't actually know a lot of the kind of details in a way, right? Like they kind of were a little bit blissfully ignorant to what certain things meant. And it was a great little like just undercurrent there, that they were kind of being almost like having to be educated in like how this all works, because they were just like going about their lives being hockey pro players and like all of this. And then like boom, in comes this like gorgeous little omega that they're like, oh fuck.
How do we take care of it?
Yeah.
Oh, like it's like it is it's just so cool to take just like normal everyday elements and make it omegaverse. Let's take birth control and make it omegaverse. Let's take healthcare and make it omegaverse. So it's just fun to like make up all these little things in my head about what's going on in the universe.
Yeah, and I mean, like we have to take a moment to swoon over. Well, I have to take a moment to swoon over like my absolute favorite from that particular book being Mikhail, who is like the ultimate like grumpy, silent, stoic, like refuses to take part in anything that's fucking going on. And yet, you know, like he is on the hook from like day one, but you just like, you teased it along so fucking well. And yeah, he like, I could gush about him for a whole episode. So we don't need to, but like
I think him and Charlotte are probably two of my most well-written characters, which always comes with experience. But I think from where they start to where they end up is the most profound that I've written, because they change so much in a span of time. But yeah, everyone loves his grumpy ass. He's not mean, he's just a little mean. Like, he's moody. He never does anything to hurt her physically or go out of his way to hurt her emotionally. But he's just like broody and moody and really tall,
Yeah.
has dark hair, and he likes to beat people up on the ice. Like, how could you not fall in love?
Yeah, like he's got the whole kind of like bad boy, but also like soft inside going on, that you can like see that you can see that he's got shit going on. He's like the ultimate like I can fix him character. Like,
I can fix him. You know what? She does. She
yeah.
does. She does.
Yeah, she's like living all of our dream, right? Like pro hockey player, I can fix him. Like
At least like none of them were slutty.
yeah.
I am going to write me a slutty man here soon. I do love a reformed man whore from time to time.
Yeah, yeah. I think written in the right way, it can work so fucking well, right? Like, yeah.
They've got to be reformed. They can't be hooking up with anybody when you start reading this story.
Yeah.
But like reformed,
Yeah.
just like when he's like, oh shit, like
yeah. There's got to
done
be
playing
that
the
kind
field.
of that little period of time when they've like stopped whatever it was they were doing that was like the slutty era, and then like
Yeah, like they take their vow of celibacy because they're like, okay, this is messing me up. I gotta take a vow of celibacy, and then they meet her, and they're like,
yeah,
oh,
yeah.
I
Or
think I
there's
gotta break
like,
my vow.
or there's even like the little hint of like they go to do what they always would have done and then can't follow through on it, or you know, like there's some little seed in there.
Yeah.
It's so fucking good. It's amazing. So before we start talking about Swallow Your Pride, because we absolutely have to fucking go there, I have to ask, with how you got into writing all across these genres, like what was kind of the catalyst for you on your indie journey, in your like world of like becoming a writer, how you got into it? Like, did it all kind of come rushing through at once, or did you have like one place that sort of started it off for you and then it kind of blossomed from there? Because obviously your brain is a very creatively active place.
So like I've always been someone who like creates scenarios in my head or has fake conversations with people that are like never going to happen. Like I don't know what it's like to live that way. If you live your life not having fake conversations to people that'll never happen, like I that must be nice. And I've always been, you know, like a creative person. If I showed you my office, I have so much crafts and junk. So when the pandemic hit, I got really back into reading like hardcore. It had been a long time. I hadn't really read. And I mean, I read. And I was introduced to Lola and the Millionaires by Catherine Moon. It's kind of like the golden standard of Omegaverse. And I read it and I was like, oh shit. And me and a friend, we were like, hey, we could write something like this. And I was like, all right, let's go ahead and write an Omegaverse. So we co-wrote an Omegaverse. And then after that, I was like, we were in the middle of writing it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I need a place where they can go to get their heat serviced. And like it can just be complete debauchery. And so then Heat Haven was born, and I was just planning on going through that series. But at my core, I am a spooky season girl. There are so many spooky season girls. And if you haven't noticed, I have a very profound daddy kink. And
Which we are going to talk about in a moment.
So I think I was in the middle of Texture's Promise or Omega's Obsession, and I was like, I had read an ex-boyfriend's dad book. I can't remember which one. And I was like, that's a good trope. And then I was like, charming your dad. Charming your dad did not start off where it was. This was supposed to be a romantic comedy. I had a cartoon cover. He was going to be human. She was going to be terrible at magic. And then I was like, what if he is a demon daddy? And so that was born. So I was like, okay, I'm an Omegaverse paranormal author. This is what I'm going to do. And then I don't know where I was. and I was like, I need to write like a daddy kink book the way I like daddy kink. I read a lot of daddy, and it very much varies. There's a ton of different spectrums
Yeah.
of things people would never read, to where it's very light, and then there's kind of like this in the middle that I think is being filled right now.
Mm.
And I wrote Swallow Your Pride in 3 weeks. I
Wow.
just sat down, wrote it. It came out so easy. It's probably been the quickest book besides Heat Haven is 140 pages. It's been the fastest book I've written. It completely derailed my schedule. I'm behind schedule now. But I was
Thank
like,
you, Aiden and Jessa.
I know this whole time I was like, for the longest time, I was like, I don't know if I could write contemporary. I was like, I don't know that I could come up with a story interesting enough for contemporary. But this is also my full-time job now. And contemporary does really well in the romance market. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna bring them a daddy. And so that's what I did. So now I just write everything. And I would even branch out to others. Like I would not be opposed to writing like an alien romance at some point. I love alien romance. The only thing I probably will never write are like true dark romances. I just can't get I can read a dark romance, but writing one, I don't know that I could do it. I don't know I could pull it off. They'd wind up being too nice, and people be like, "This isn't a dark romance."
Yeah, I think there's that, like, you can have the dark romances that are still kind of light, like they bring in, like, I think someone like a JT Geisinger does it really well, right? Like that she brings in so much fucking humor, but like there is a lot of her books that have got like that real dark undertone to them. It's like, you know, you're going to be seeing like blood and shit and like, you know, like,
Yeah,
there's some bad shit going down, but it's also at the same time like filled with humor and lightness in a way that, as you say, like in your books, like I think that humor and that kind of the sweetness comes through, even though there is, because obviously in like Charming Your Dad, like there's a lot of dark shit going down, like at
yeah.
the
There's a
same
lot of
time.
dark shit going on, but
Yeah,
like never like the romance itself would never be.
yeah.
I think the darkest I would do is probably like kidnapping, but he would be like such a nice kidnapper. Like he would give her snacks, and like,
Yeah.
you know, her handcuffs would be fuzzy. They wouldn't hurt her poor wrists. Like
Yeah.
that would be
It's like he
my
would have been like besotted with her for 6 months before kidnapping.
right, right. Like he's like contemplating it. He's like, oh, should I kidnap her? And then he like gets like a mini fridge and puts it in the back of the van and makes sure like all her favorite things are there. And then he kidnaps her, and it's all for the better.
Yeah. It's like we've just planned out like the next.
Yeah. The next kidnapping book.
Yeah. Like where things are going next in the contemporary genre. So yes, we have to, well, I don't even know where we start with Swallow Your Pride. Like, do we start with the dedication? I feel like we need to start with the dedication.
All right. The dedication is for daddy, ... I mean Pedro Pascal. That man took over the internet, and he did such a good job of like accepting the term daddy and being like completely okay with it, and also
Yeah.
not having any children.
Yeah.
And like and he's just like so hot. Like, and he plays a daddy, like a real daddy, in The Mandalorian and The Last of Us. And I'm like, yes. So I'm very attracted to that man. And he is daddy. And Aiden doesn't really look much like Pedro Pascal, but like, and he doesn't really have much of his personality, because Pedro Pascal is funny. Pedro Pascal is so funny. And I don't think Aiden's like necessarily funny, but I just love that man, and he's so hot, and he's daddy. So
Yeah. So it's like it's the, as you say, it's like the moment that this whole thing is having. And I think and again, it's like it's not that the daddy thing didn't exist, right? It's just shining a light on something that probably didn't, as you say, like didn't necessarily have like the widespread number of books that it now has, that are starting to bring it in more and more.
there's just like there's a major spectrum of daddy kink. You have age play, which a lot of people are not okay with, but I read it. it's consenting adults, and I don't see anything wrong with consenting adults and what they do in their private time, and I don't think anybody else should either, and that's totally okay if you would never read it and it's nothing that you would be into. Because sometimes I've read it and I'm like, this is a little bit too far for me. But a lot.
Yeah.
It ranges, right? Like it could be just like you wear really cute clothes, or it's all about submissive dominant dynamic. So you have that spectrum of things, and then you have like the completely opposite where it's just like thrown out randomly in sex with like no context whatsoever. And then you have like this middle ground where people are kind of taking it and making it their own, and the different daddies that they're creating. And I mean, for me, I specifically look for something in a daddy. I don't do mean daddies. If you're mean, you're not a fucking daddy, in my opinion, because daddy's not mean.
Yeah.
Second is the caregiver role. I listened to a TikTok the other day, and he was like, "You're poor and you want me to be submissive to you? What am I submitting to? Poverty? No, daddies need to be rich. Okay, like daddies can be like middle upper class. Okay, okay, like as long as you got a house, the ideal situation would be I wouldn't have to work.
Yeah.
So that's like that's the
Yeah.
that's the thing there. And then the last thing is communication, and like what is expected, whose role is what, when, and where, because you have somewhere it's a complete bedroom thing. It's not outside the bedroom. And then you have it where it's a complete lifestyle, and 24/7 you are submitting and doing to that person. And I think Aiden and Jessa fall in the middle of that, where it is a 24/7 thing, but it's not as strict as other people can be in this dynamic.
It's more, it to me, it felt like it was more like a private between them thing, that it was like they would have kind of talked about it beforehand if they were going to be playing those roles out in public. And right. I think you write it really beautifully, like in, I think, those moments where, or is it when like she accidentally calls him daddy and like the brother overhears or something, and then she's like completely mortified, like
yeah. And he's like, if you bring this up, I'm gonna fucking drown you.
Yeah.
don't talk about it. Like, but yet she says it around Penny, her best friend, and Penny is very accepting and understands. And like, but like obviously Jessa wouldn't go out of her way to call him that in front of her. So they're not like in your face with a dynamic, but in their relationship, Aiden is the one who takes care of things, and Jessa lets him and gives that control to him when it comes to their sex life and their personal life. Aiden is going to take care of it.
Yeah.
Daddy
and
has got it.
Yeah. And I loved how, like, even though it was something that he was not really that aware of in his like own interests beforehand, he very quickly got on board.
It's like that Kumbacha meme where she's like, "Daddy?"
Yeah.
Daddy. he's like, "Am I into this?"
I am into
it gets a little bit old when the guy is constantly the one in books introducing this world to the women, because there are so many women who are doing the opposite. Most women who are reading all of this are going home and teaching their man partner something that they learned from the books. So I really wanted to play with her being like the catalyst to the kink, and she was even nervous to bring it up, and if she hadn't have said that like subconsciously, maybe it wouldn't have happened. But he was like, "Hey, listen, you said this word and I kind of liked it. Is this what you're into?" And she's like, "Yeah, that's what I'm into."
Because that's what I really love, that like, if anything, this book is like the chef's kiss masterclass in communication between characters. And I really loved that there's no third act breakup, like there's no miscommunication. Like, I don't want to spoiler it too much for anybody who hasn't read the book yet, but basically, you know, these are things that I know a lot of your community have already kind of pointed out and highlighted, that are things that are the reasons why you need to fucking read this book, basically. Like, and
I'm planning on no third act breakups for the entire series. So pray for me that I can figure this out. Like, I know there's a lot of hate for the third act breakup right now, but I'm gonna tell you, if you read too many in a row with like no drama, you're gonna be like,
yeah,
where's
we gotta
What's
have drama. Like, yeah, and I think
You
you
have
do
to
that
have
really well, that you bring in enough drama that there's the tension, there's the something happens that like changes the circumstances, right? Because that's like ultimately what we need. We need the pressure to dial up, ramp up, whatever, in whatever way. Because otherwise, like, what are we writing? Just like a cozy little like
Yeah.
and there's
The
a
next one
master
will be easy. The next one will be easy for no third act breakup. I got that all planned. It's the other one.
Yeah, like without saying too much, like we already, if you've read Swallow Your Pride, like you know that there is some chaos coming. Like
I had so many DMs like early on. They're like, my spidey senses are tingling. Is this gonna happen? And then it like I'll get like another text like an hour later, like, oh, it is gonna happen.
yeah. Because it's like, you know how like with some authors will just throw like a one-off like reference to whatever is the next book, right? Like, and you're really kind of left at the end of the book like not knowing at all if that's where the next one is going to go, or is this even a thing, or whatever. But you, yeah, like really masterfully kind of like plant the seed, and then it's like there's this little scattering of other bits and pieces through the book that as it gets closer and closer to the finish line, you're like, oh my god, like
I wanted people to
yeah.
really want their book, which they do. So I'm like, if I put like enough, like you can feel the tension already like in there. So I'm like, all right. And I will say this, I'm not going to tell you what happens, but I will say I came up with the idea of how they start hooking up when I ate an edible, and it's the best idea I've ever had while high. So I cannot wait to share it with you guys, and you'll know that I took a 10 milligram gummy, and that's where this idea came from.
So when we like jot down the show notes for this episode on like author ideas and inspiration,
edibles,
big fat tick. Writing taboo romance. Like
it was like I like my cover designer Sandra, she does pretty much all my covers, and she beta reads. I text her, you know, I was like sitting in bed, like I was like, is this idea like really good, or am I really high? And like, the next morning I wake up and she's like, no, this is golden. This is what's going to happen.
This has to happen.
Yes. So can't wait for you guys to see what I came up with that time.
And like from what we've seen already, it is going to be so fucking good. And I really like Aiden and Jessa in Swallow Your Pride are just like such a good, it's like it's taboo, but it's also like taboo in a way that like it's almost like, you know, the whole time it's okay. I think that's also something I really enjoyed about this book, because some taboo romances you read that do get into the darker thing, you're kind of like, how the fuck is this ever gonna work, or whatever. You know, like it really has that element of tension the whole way through, whereas in this case it's more that they just had to get out of their own heads, or like out of their own way, in order to make things happen. But also like the communication in it is so fucking well laid out. And like you say, I love that Jessa is, you know, she'll talk about herself, how she's like happily someone who wants to be taken care of, right? But she's learned the hard way what it's like to not communicate your needs. And I think like any fucking woman reading this book is going to potentially take a lot away from that, because even in like, you might be in an existing relationship that is very fucking happy and still take away something from that where you're like, wow, yeah, I haven't communicated my needs.
Yeah, I need to take a page from my own character.
Like you're writing this going, I feel so seen right now.
Yeah, and I mean, I marketed it as an age gap romance, which it is, but like I really don't make that much of an issue. They really don't give a shit.
She's quite a mature, like
And she's attracted to older men,
yeah,
always has been. So
she's
it's
had
not.
to take care of herself like the whole time. You know, she's very like she could easily be the more mature one in the relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And Aiden, like, where do we start with Aiden? Like, holy hell! Like, did you write the perfect fucking like mailman?
I was nervous. I was like messaging my beta readers. And I'm like, is he too perfect? Like, do I need to give him a problem? Does he
Do I need
need
to
like,
rough him up a bit?
does he need like some issues? And she's like, no, he's a book boyfriend. Just keep him the way he is. Because I mean, he's got like, he has dealt with anger issues, and you can still see that he still deals with that. He never lashes out at Jessica ever.
Yeah.
But like with external factors, he does have anger issues that he has to like work on. Like he can't just walk away. Like he's got he's got to go do something. Like he's still working through that. But
Yeah.
next book, he's my middle child, problem child, angry at the world. So that's saved for him.
Yeah.
Aiden just has his small issues. The next one is the problematic brother.
Yeah. Well, because Aiden is the eldest brother of our series of brothers that we see in this new series, and he's like that quintessential, like he's been a pro baseball player, he's an athlete, he's now a CEO of a very successful sporting goods company. So as you say, like he's probably like the you know, when we talk about fictional characters being very real life, like he's a very realistic character, right? Like he's not got like some major emotional damage going on in the background that is like fucking him up. He's just genuinely someone who has had like a career that ended in pro sports and now has had to make good with that and deal with anger. Like, and if that is also not very fucking relatable for particularly males, you know, that have maybe had life upended for whatever reason, or like things. And I really like how you wrote that into his character so well, like the physical aspect of his injury and things. Like that was really cool to see. Like, yeah, because I think it would be very
Switching
easy.
spanking hands.
Yeah. But you know, it'd be very easy to like gloss over that and forget that kind of that is going to be a huge part of his character and what he's about and why he, as you say, like why he does maybe have like some anger going on and things like that. So yeah. And yeah, we have to talk about Avalon, right? Like we have to talk about Avalon.
Avalon is going to be, I think, in each book, or Avalon in a different place, maybe not in Florida. But I definitely for sure the next one. And I will give you some hot tea that I have not confirmed for anybody else. This is a 3-book series.
Oh,
when he has 4 brothers. So if you read Swallow Your Pride, you know what that means.
Yep. My brain is already like
I've had people ask, and I've told people, but I hadn't like said it, but it'll be 3 books.
Let me just like compose myself for a moment.
So but yeah, Avalon will be a part of it, and they'll all be different. Lincoln is not a daddy. I don't see either of the twins have got a lot of growing up to do.
Yeah, because when we meet them in this book, they are like they're a cameo appearance, and they're very party boy. Like was the energy so, going down. Yeah,
time is going to pass.
Yeah,
between the next book, so they're gonna have some time to mature. I don't want to have my poor female main character be the one to have to teach them how to grow up.
Yeah,
that's not fair to her. But yeah, there's gonna be like, it's gonna be a lot of fun. That's gonna be the 3rd one.
Yeah, and so Avalon is the, I guess, like in Swallow Your Pride, like Avalon is the VIP exclusive sex club of choice by
and this book really only touches the surface of it
Yeah.
based on what Jessa and Aiden are into. Like, they like to be watched. They like to watch to an extent, but not, they're not, I wouldn't really consider them voyeurs. It's more so of being in the area of other people doing provocative things. But yeah, they like to be watched, they like to be in that atmosphere, and they're like an impact play, but they really don't utilize everything that's going on in the club. So we will definitely see some more specific things that are behind certain closed doors at Avalon.
Yeah, because we don't see Penny at the club, do we, in this book? But she is the one that introduces Jessa to the
She
idea.
does introduce Jessa, and yet she says she doesn't go, but I mean, she
Yeah.
seems to know a lot about the club for someone who doesn't go. Doesn't she?
Got some like little question marks there as readers as we come away.
She's like, oh yeah, I never go there. I never go there.
But you might be into it.
You should go. But Penny does seem to know a lot about Avalon.
Yeah. So that's we know that we're getting some like little added teasers coming along for future.
Lots of secrets.
Yeah. Which is like, hence why your DMs have just been like filled with readers basically screaming at you for the past few days.
I know. I put up a poll in my Facebook group and I was like, guys, I've derailed my schedule. Like, I was supposed to be done writing my third paranormal book by like the end of this month. Nope, that's happening next month. And I was hoping, I have this whole 5-book angel demons why choose planned, and I'm like, I'm gonna spend July to December writing all 5 of these books. I'm gonna rapid release them in 2024. Girl, that's not happening. I don't know when I'm gonna write this. But I asked, I was like, who do you guys want? Do you want Forget Your Morals, the 3rd hockey book, or this series? And so many people said Forget Your Morals for Lincoln's book. And I'm like, of course, I edged you guys.
Yeah.
Of course you're
So we know that that's coming. We also know that, can we give a little sneak peek that you've got your omegaverse is on its way?
So the next 2 coming out by me are Don't Puck With My Heart, which is the one right after One Pucked Up Pack. So One Pucked Up Pack,
going back to omegaverse and hockey genre.
Yep. And this one is MMF, which the first one did not have any MM in it, but this one does. It's a smaller pack. You have a female alpha, which was super. She's so hard to write though, because she's like, girl, so difficult. But you meet all these characters except for one in One Pucked Up Pack. So it's not going to be as emotional as One Pucked Up Pack. There are going to be some like tough moments, but not what I did in the first book.
We cannot top the mountain that was One Pucked Up Pack. So if you want to cry and be horny, go read that book, and then like
yes, this one will be a much warmer hug. I mean, this one is a lot more finding self-love while you're falling in love and not getting in your own way of your own happiness. And Piper, our main character, who is the best friend in One Pucked Up Pack, is just so hard on herself. So that's just one of the biggest things she's got to work on, is her negative thinking, the way she thinks about herself and seeing herself how other people see her. And then there's more drama with the other 2.
Because she was very much like the alpha protecting her best friend, right? Like when we meet them in One Pucked Up Pack, like she was essentially almost like taking on the role of boyfriend, right? Like, you know, she
really was like their relation. And I love Piper and Charlotte's friendship. It's one of my favorite things to write, because like they even joke like, I wish like we were sexually attracted to each other, because like then we could just,
it's so easy.
So it's like, it's a best friendship like any girls would have, but then you also have this additional layer of Piper being an alpha and having these instincts to truly be the caretaker of that friendship, and she does. And it's the question of, if you're busy taking care of everyone else, who takes care of you?
If that is not just like the siren call for every fucking like woman or woman identifying person out there, like, if you are not taking care of
honestly
yourself, how the fuck
even
you
like
take care of anyone else?
even in like some of the best relationships, it's just like the mental load. And that's one great thing about why chooses too, is that there's so many more people to spread the load of the household to. I don't think it was meant for two people, honestly.
Yeah, there is a lot to be said about having 4 to 5 people that can share the burden of responsibility.
For sure.
No matter how flawed you might be, like, there's just a lot more hands to get shit done.
Right. So while this one might not be as emotional, I think a lot of readers will truly identify with her situation and how she talks to herself and learns to undo a lot of thinking.
Oh, it's gonna be so fucking good. I can't wait.
And then the next one after that's going to be completely fucking unhinged. That one is the third book in my Charming series. That one's Why Choose, and I mean, like, she's gonna be the craziest of all the women in this series.
Is this someone we've already met?
It is.
I feel
if you read Charming the Devil, you know who it is. By the end. And it's just like, I mean, like the ideas I've got rolling around about what her and her dudes are gonna get into it's just out there. So that one's gonna write itself.
Yeah,
that one it'll fly. Charming Your Dad was so easy to write. So easy to write. I was like, just think of like every intrusive thought that like I've had, and Blair is just gonna do she really does. She's like, you're talking to my man, like she just casts a spell and makes the girl fall and spill all the cocktails everywhere. Like like I was like, you just got she's got to be someone who acts like on intrusive thoughts. And
and has magic to like cause complete and utter chaos with as she goes along.
I'm like, why are the daddies the easiest to write?
Yeah. Hey, where the muse takes you, where Pedro Pascal takes you, we follow.
And daddy we trust. All we can do.
It is so fucking good. And while like we could keep talking about this all fucking day, I cannot wait for everyone to basically finish watching this interview and go and get at least one of your books, if not the whole fucking stack. Fill their bookshelf, fill your TBR, fill your Kindle. They're all so fucking good. No matter the genre, if you haven't read one of these genres before, please go and dip your toes in the water because they are fucking fantastic. Would you care to share with everyone where they can find you, where they can connect with you? We will, of course, link up all your books and places in the show notes with the episode as well. But where can people come and hang out and get into Sarah Blue's wonderful, mystical world?
So all my books are on Kindle Unlimited. So if you have a Kindle Unlimited subscription, it's included. I have a pretty wild TikTok. Like I do a lot of weird things on TikTok. And Instagram is the same. It's just Sarah Blue Author, Sarah with an H. And then I have my website, authorsarahblue.com, and that's where I sell my special editions, and I do book boxes for each book usually too. So that's where you can find those or join my mailing list. But yeah, I do weird things on TikTok, and I'm very active on Instagram as well.
We're so here for it. And it's for Swallow Your Pride. You did special foiled cover editions, didn't you?
I did. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I was busy like drooling over those as Swallow Your Pride was coming out, and there was these beautiful foiled covers going. I was like, oh my fucking God, like this is so good.
Shipping halfway across the world is not cheap.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not
For
cheap.
any indie authors out there watching this, like, it is something you absolutely have to bear in mind, that the cost of shipping worldwide is horrendous, but as long as you do it right and look after yourself in the process and look after your readers in the process, it can be the most fucking amazing thing. So
It can. I mean, I do international shipping
yeah.
to everywhere, and you know, I think a lot of people have stuck straight to Amazon, but most of my books are Ingram Sparks. They're available everywhere. Like bookstores can buy them and things like that if you're a paperback girly.
Yeah, yeah, which we love to see. We love to see. Well, I have to say the biggest thank you. I have to send you the biggest virtual hug because I love your books. I love your world that you have created, or the worlds that you have created. It has been an absolute fucking highlight to have you come and hang out with us on the podcast. We like, we're gonna have to do another one. Like when you've got future books coming out, we're gonna have to have you back because there is
Oh yeah, I could talk about anything forever. What do you want to talk about?
there is so much. And as we've just talked about, there is a lot coming out. So make sure to be following all the places. Thank you, my love. It has been an absolute pleasure. And thank you for tuning in, everyone. If you're not already following us online, we are at successful.witches. I am at Elliot Rose Author. You can find me in all the places. Thank you for being with us. And we will see you on the next episode.
Thank you for having me.